Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I went to the grocery store this morning. I went on a meat run. I keep reading that there's going to be meat shortages, and I was a little freaked out by that. By the way, here in Georgia, where I live, in the United States, they are talking about more or less the governor of Georgia has opened up our state, and so we are slowly but surely creeping out of our quarantine. But anyway, I wanted to show you today, I'm going to expound a little bit on the point I was making yesterday. As Brad Garlinghouse has said many times, there's not going to be any one blockchain. Now, XRP is the one, but there will be others, and I wanted to expound on that. All of this is going to be interconnected, and this isn't some big secret. I just happened to run across a couple of documents over the course of the last few days, and so I wanted to point that out. Okay, and I mentioned Stellar yesterday. Stellar will be in the game, but so will XRP be in the game with IBM. I mean, it goes back and forth. But all of these things are going to hook together. Now, it's not going to be tons of different digital assets. It's going to be a handful, in my opinion, the chosen ones. XRP, I believe, is the chosen one. I think XLM and XLM and Ethereum would be the two others that I know of. And then, of course, Bitcoin. I think they're going to allow Bitcoin, which is a proof of work that doesn't work, that they're going to allow to be in the mix, but it's only going to do anything if it runs through the Interledger protocol. Now, so let's start here. First, the market. We've got some we're having the Bitcoin halving coming up, and look who is performing, XRP and Stellar. So I'm sure that they're going to start putting out as many nasty comments as they can about XRP, since Bitcoin maximalists just can't have that. Now, this does not have to do with what I'm going to talk about today, but I wanted to show it to you, and I want to give Jungle Inc. some credit. He posted this today. If you think that we're all crazy for thinking that the dollar as the world reserve currency is not going to remain, it just can't happen. Watch this. Watch what this guy says.
You're in charge of this thing called...
Well, shoot, I think that my microphone's not working. Okay, I had my earphones that were not set up right, but here we go.
United States government / budget, and it gives you political and fiscal authority to do, quote unquote, the right thing.
Yeah.
Would you mark to market balance sheets today and create the economic downside that would follow, or would you put in place or attempt to put in place some kind of economic policies to get you to a better place down some theoretical road?
I mean, how do you solve a problem where you're spending 10% of, you're running a 10% fiscal deficit? You're not going to get growth in the absence of private sector credit demand. So the government's idea right now is we're going to export our way out of this. And when I asked a senior member of the Obama administration last week, how are we going to grow exports if we won't allow nominal wage deflation? And he says, we're just going to kill the dollar. And I said, okay, more you mean. So that's the only answer.
That's a dead answer.
It's a dead answer, but that's where we're at.
In other words, they knew that they've been boxed in a corner they can't get out of way back in the Obama administration. They had to create a plan that would work. I believe that plan was digital assets. And I believe that's why the Federal Reserve Chairman said they've been working on digital currencies for the last 2 decades. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay, now, Cryptopolis sent me something interesting yesterday, and it led me kind of on a little journey. To me, it makes it easier. We say a lot of things about, I say Ripple, how important Ripple is, and I talk about these things and how Ripple is at the core of what's going to change in the entire financial system. Those are easy things to say, but if you understand the history of Ripple, I think that sometimes that it can put things together in your mind and make you really understand that I'm not just talking. This is not something that just happened. All you have to do is look at the history of it. And Cryptopolis sent me this and kind of led me on that journey, and I found something I didn't know about before. Ripple Labs 2014, a year in review, and it gives a lot of the different things that were going on. Prominent industry research and papers, Federal Reserve Bank, NACHA, Deloitte, Bank of England, Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. It's got all these different things. The year we honed our vision, and it shows the internet and the Ripple network, and then it talks about different things that went on during that year. The infrastructure phase, they're comparing the creation of this digital asset infrastructure to what happened with the internet. The federation phase, and then they talk about how as the internet matured, you had Facebook and LinkedIn and Google and all this. The independent value phase, and then you have TechCrunch, building the internet of money. There's a video we've seen before on this channel. As we keep going along, then we go down here. I'm sorry, let me get a drink here. Okay. And so as we go along here, we see different things that Ripple was working on in 2014. There is Stefan Thomas. Did I get that name? I always draw a blank on it. Sometimes I draw a blank on his name. But anyway, so yes, Stefan Thomas is his name, and he's now with Coil, of course, but he was one of the first guys at Ripple. And anyway, so that's 2014. There's all kinds of stuff in there if you want to go and click through. That's not why I'm here. So in looking around, I bumped into this guy. Meet Norman Reed, the general counsel at Ripple Labs. This guy was general counsel back in, this is February 13th, 2015. So I got to looking into this guy. One of the things that caught my attention is that he said, down here, remember we were talking about Karen Gifford? He said somewhere in here, he says, that's where I met Karen. From there, I got a job at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Remember, Federal Reserve Bank of New York is where Timothy Geithner was. It's where Glenn Hutchins, who is on the board at Digital Currency Group, is there now. That's where I met Karen. I stayed for about 6.5 years, where I found myself in Washington, D.C., and working for the SEC at the Office of Chief Counsel in the Division of Trading and Markets. So now, we don't have not just one, not two, but we have 3 people that are at Ripple from the very beginning, like the top first 10 employees who come from the Federal Reserve and the SEC. Okay, so let's look at their resumes. I've talked about them before. Norman Reed, okay, this is his background. He was general counsel at Ripple 2015 to 2017. He was also at DTCC for 8 years before that. And before that, he's special counsel, Office of Chief Counsel, Division of Market Regulation, U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. And then before that, Federal Reserve Bank of New York, 1993 to 2000. Okay? Remember, Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Timothy Geithner, one of the 3 guys that solved the 2008 or attempted to solve the 2008 financial crisis. But let me show you the most interesting thing about Norman Reed is this right here. Norman Reed, when he was at the SEC, he prepared a number of no-action exemptive letters, reviewed numerous enforcement cases, and provided securities law advice to senior SEC attorneys and to outside counsel. So let me ask you a question, folks. Here we are. We've been told this lie, and I do mean lie. Listen to me, lie. We've been told this lie for the last 2 or 3 years that there's this crazy, scary thing that XRP could be called a security. We've had a guy come out that used to be with, I think one of the guys used to be with the CFTC, that he thinks XRP and Ethereum are securities. We've had all these people, we've had all these scary articles. So my question to you is, so if there really was And I've told you, Miguel Valles goes there from the CFTC, and it wouldn't happen in a million years. So now I'm showing you a guy, Norman Reed, who left. He was at the SEC in charge of issuing no action letters. And for those of you that know what a no action letter, that don't know what a no action letter is, that's more or less a letter that the SEC would issue to a company, and they would say, hey, we know you've been selling a security, but we're going to give you this no action letter, and this is your get out of jail free card. In other words, we're not going to prosecute you, even though you've been doing something you shouldn't have been doing. So a guy who was in charge, who was one of the guys who prepared no action letters, thinks that it's a smart idea to go to this startup that's selling this digital asset XRP that could, according to all the news articles and all the scary things they've put in front of us for the last 2 years, it could be called a security. And this guy who was at the SEC could be one of the guys who was on the hook and could get in trouble as a result of Ripple selling XRP, which could be declared a security. Do you think that happens in 10 million years? No, sirree, it doesn't happen. It's much more likely that the SEC sent this guy to work at this company, Ripple. That makes a lot more sense to me. Just saying, but I have no proof of that. I'm just saying. I've got my common sense hat on. Come on. And then you got Karen Gifford, goes to Ripple Labs. Well, where was she? Well, if you go down her resume, she was at Ripple there, and then she met Norman Reed at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So she comes from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And then we have Greg Kidd, who, remember, he's the guy that said they went straight to the Treasury when they realized what they had. And where was he? He was a senior analyst at the Federal Reserve Board. How about them apples? All right. Now, I also wanted to, before I left this, I wanted to show you Ripple 2015 year in review. I just wanted to show you some of the timeline, the things that went on in 2015. Norman Reed joins Ripple as general counsel. Fed publishes report for improving the U.S. payment system. February, American Banker includes Ripple in 20 fintech companies to watch. Ripple joins W3C. That's to make the ILP the standard, folks. Then Anna Manuel joins Ripple as an advisor. Brad Garlinghouse joins Ripple, a Harvard graduate. He also thought it was a good idea to go work for a company that had a digital asset that they were going to be selling that could any day now be called a security. Don Donahue joins Ripple as an advisor. We've talked about him before. Ryan Zagone elected to the steering committee, Fed Faster Payments Task Force. Michael Barr joins Ripple. That guy was from the Treasury also, from what I remember. World Economic Forum names Ripple a tech pioneer. Brett Allenbach joins Ripple as CFO. Santander makes a $4 million strategic investment. Ripple rebrand. An awful lot of things going on for Ripple with an awful lot of powerful people and organizations. Channel partnerships with Accenture and CGI. Ripple publishes open source ILP reference implementation. Ripple included in Forbes FinTech 50. Microsoft adopts Ripple and ILP for Azure cloud platform. I mean, this is a startup, folks. A startup. This is 1 year. Starts in 2012, and that's what their year looks like in 2015, just 3 years later. Can't make this up. Now, I wanted to bring all of your attention to something. David Schwartz has a hobby. You know, many people are addicted to things like alcohol and drugs and addicted to things like, I guess, running or whatever. There's all kinds of addictions. You may not know it, but I believe David Schwartz, one of his addictions is to Quora. And Quora is the platform. I believe that David Schwartz, this is how he keeps his mind turning. I believe that he is such a smart guy that he is on Quora constantly answering questions because he likes the challenge of it. I think that's the kind of brain this guy has. He cannot sit still and not have I think his brain is like a flywheel. I think it's always in motion. And I believe that I believe Quora is his outlet. Okay. And if you look through his Quora, you will see and probably agree that it is. He answered this 11, and it's all kinds of questions. 11 hours ago, 12 hours ago, 13 hours ago, 15 hours ago, 17. So this guy's on Quora. I mean, go through it. This guy's on there all the time. So I went through there just as an interesting exercise, and because some of you have not ever seen the answers to these questions. And I found 3 questions that he answered that I thought were fascinating. And some of you may have seen these, maybe not. First one is it really true that David Schwartz sold all his XRP coins in recent days? If yes, why? No, it's not true. I still hold a significant fraction of all the XRP I ever held. Unlike Jed McCaleb, Arthur Brito, or Chris Larson, I did not participate in the original division of XRP. I was not gifted XRP by the company in the early days. My salary was not particularly large back then. Nevertheless, my wife agreed to allow me to invest in mining and buying Bitcoin. And then when XRP was available on the open market, we agreed to convert Bitcoin into XRP when the exchange rate seemed favorable. As a part of this agreement, we agreed not to take on more risk than we felt was rational. This limited the amount that I could buy and required me to sell off portions of cryptocurrencies if cryptocurrencies became a significant fraction of our assets. I have been continuously selling parts of both my Bitcoin and XRP holdings over the years to keep with this agreement. I will continue to manage my own assets to protect my family and to align my personal risk tolerance. My biggest liquid assets are XRP and Bitcoin. My biggest illiquid asset is Ripple stock. I still have most of my eggs in one basket, but I still like that basket. Okay, so he's talking about XRP. Now, here's another question I found pretty good. What will happen when Ripple's XRP escrow runs out? Each month since the escrow began, Ripple has put back into escrow the unused portion of the funds released from escrow. This means that the escrow could continue for quite some time. At some point, Ripple will run out of XRP. If not in a literal sense, that Ripple has no XRP at all, the practical sense that Ripple will have exhausted the initial supply of XRP that was gifted to it by the legal founders. At that point, it's theoretically possible that Ripple will just call it quits and fire all its employees. But I think it's more likely that by that time, Ripple will have other businesses and revenue sources that will allow it to continue. The original problem Ripple was created to solve was how to distribute XRP. At first, it was simple. Just give it to people. But as soon as XRP could easily be traded for cash, that stopped working. All the giveaways were gamed. And you can't just sell it. There isn't any initial demand or functioning market. So weirdly, when Ripple's XRP runs out, I will see it as us having completed our execution of an extremely complex and unexpectedly challenging task. Now, this is the most interesting question. All right, why is Ripple holding 50 billion XRP? Ripple's targeted use case for XRP is settling international payments. This will require a significant expenditure of money to make it happen. A key reason nobody has done something similar to date is simply that there was no good way to make money at it. Because Ripple holds so much XRP, Ripple can capture a significant fraction of the value of any future increases in the price of XRP. This gives Ripple a revenue model to justify the expenditures needed to position XRP as a settlement asset. Ripple's 60 billion XRP is Ripple's secret sauce, the thing it has that its competitors don't have. That will allow it to spend tens of millions of dollars and attract top talent to build a high-speed, low-cost, cross-currency settlement system. Folks, I believe the entire reason that Ripple was allowed to even have all of this XRP was because this was the only way to go about replacing the outdated SWIFT system, and to do it on a worldwide scale. I believe that's what that answer really means. That's just my opinion. Okay, now let's get into me showing you further why I believe that, or I don't just believe it, Brad Garlinghouse has told you there's going to be more than one digital asset. It's not going to be one. Here's what I think you're going to have. You're going to have central bank digital currencies that are more or less stable coins, and they are going to connect to the world of digital assets through trade finance and all other types of things that are going to go on. the Internet of Things, Internet of Value. I believe XRP and XLM are going to be in the, I don't just believe it, I'm going to show it to you right here. This is yesterday what I showed you. I'm going to show it to you one more time real quick. This is from IBM, Blockchain for Trade. They're showing you their plan. They're showing you who's in the game. Payments, Ripple, Swift, Stellar. They've got R3 Voltron. They got TradeLens. That's their platform with Maersk, the largest shipping container company in the world. And then the most important part of this is what I showed you down here, and it tells you straight out. For example, Hyperledger Quilt, an implementation of the Interledger protocol, allowing for a cross-ledger namespace and transfers of information between ledgers, will be a standard TradeLens intends to follow. So they're telling you point blank right there. Now, I found this from I Am Legion, and I want to make sure you understand where IBM comes into this. And he shows it to you right here. Hyperledger Fabric was initially contributed by Digital Asset. Remember Digital Asset Holdings, Blythe Masters? Everybody's connected here, folks. Everybody's going to get in on this action. IBM, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. Remember, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan both back Digital Asset Holdings, but IBM, Ripple, Digital Asset Holdings, this Hyperledger, all of this was put together so that all of these guys are stakeholders. They're all in the game. It's all going to interoperate. And the Interledger protocol is at ground zero of that interoperating. So, but it says here, Hyperledger Fabric was initially contributed by Digital Asset and IBM as a result of the first hackathon. So these guys, I believe, created Hyperledger. They knew that this was a way to get all of the players interconnected, and I believe that's what it was about from the beginning. Now, yesterday when I was talking about how, oh, this is Interledger protocol. No, it's not just, it doesn't just mean, oh, they're going to use the Interledger protocol and XRP or XLM for that matter is not going to be in the game. No, both of them are going to be in the game, and Ethereum is going to be in the game, and Bitcoin also is going to be in the game. If I was going to pick four, those are the ones, but XRP being the one, and the other being second, third tier, okay? But look, I will prove to you, XRP is going to be used even by IBM. Many of you have probably never seen this clip. It's brought to us by Panda Ripple XRP. This is Jesse Lund, IBM's head of blockchain solutions, right here.
Just to sort of contrast that, it sounds a little like, this is in the same realm as with Ripple to some extent. Can you sort of tell our community sort of how to compare and sort of contrast that as to how that's different and what you guys are sort of doing?
Yeah, so I think credit Ripple for the vision of using a digital asset in order to enact immediate settlement with finality. I think their implementation followed one path. Our implementation is a little bit different. We're not the issuer of an asset. In fact, what we believe is that there should be an ecosystem, a variety of digital assets that provide the settlement instruments that enable these cross-border payments. And the participants on the network should be able to choose and negotiate their choices in real time. And the pricing might be different depending on the settlement instrument you use. Okay. So I think with Ripple, they're looking at XRP as their primary digital asset for settlement. For us, it could be Lumens, it could be Ripple, it could be XRP even, it could be Bitcoin, but it would also probably include other instruments like stable coins and even eventually, soon, hopefully, central bank issued digital currency.
You see? So central bank digital currencies. But remember, folks, we're talking about, we're going to have all these major players, but remember, never forget, we're not talking about some of the money, talking about all of the money. Okay? Now, Brad Combs sent me this document yesterday. I can't remember if I've shown this before or not, but he told me to go check out page 13. So I wanted to show you this too. Now remember, this is the World Economic Forum in collaboration with Deloitte. Inclusive deployment of blockchain for supply chains. Part 6A, framework for blockchain interoperability. These people have had a goal of interoperating all of this from the beginning, folks. They just have. I want you to go down to, I think he said page 13. There's 11. All right, here we go. No, this one. So interoperability solutions released by multiple companies and mapped out according to the 3 technical methods presented above. Liquid by blockchain, relay, and then hash time lock contract. Agreements off-chain, interledger, hyperledger quilt, R3 Quora settler, Bitcoin Lightning Network, Bitcoin Relay. So you can see, if you really look around long enough, you will find Stellar, XRP, Bitcoin, and Ethereum, folks. Those are the ones you'll find. Now, I found another IBM document, and I don't know if it's been found before. And this I ran across in a Google search, and then I went to Twitter and tried to find anybody who's shown it. If you showed it, let me know, okay? Now, it's called Making Blockchain Real for Business. This is from back in 2017. And as we go down here, you will see, and what this is more or less, Making Blockchain Real for Business is IBM. It's kind of like they're talking about their strategy and what makes sense. And as you go down, as we go down here, we'll get to a point where it says, we get to here. Blockchain vendors offer specialization. Each vendor offers specialization. So that you can tell they're approaching it from a standpoint of, look, everybody's bringing their different type of platform to the table here. Ripple Network, Ethereum Network, Blockchain Variant Network, Ripple Trust System, Ethereum Trust System. And then you keep going down. It says, how can IBM blockchain be different? How do we differentiate? Open design, providing flexibility with pluggable and modular trust system, open for specialized blockchains, e.g. Ripple. In other words, we're open to having our blockchain. So we want to create our blockchain so that it communicates with these other blockchains. Notice interledger right here, interledger. And then as we go down here, what would enterprise chain infrastructure look like? This is what their infrastructure would look like. What do you see? Interledger, ILP, interledger protocol right there. Concept introduction, interledger, intraledger. And then you go down here, they say it again, interledger right here. Interledger protocol, vision, enterprise synergy, enterprise chain infrastructure, interledger protocol. Folks, they're spelling it out for you how all this is going to work. And remember, because it all goes back to the document that Love for Crypto found for everybody, the Everest document. And here it is, trade finance. These are all the names we keep seeing. R3, that is digital asset holdings, the same digital asset holdings that got with IBM and created the hyperledger, was it Quilt or Fabric? One of them. So you've got the ILP right here. It becomes the standard by 2020. And then the real fun starts, 2020 to 2025. This right here is where all the money starts to flow, folks. That's the way I read that. And then if you go and you look at Hyperledger Foundation, just look at all of the players. It's everybody. It's all the money. It's all the big players. And then what do we have in our final slide? This right here, when the history books are written, I'm going to get this blown up, framed, and put on my wall in my office, because I believe Love for Crypto, if anybody deserves all the credit in the world for having discovered what was really going to happen from earlier than anybody else, I'll keep telling you. And if you don't follow the guy, Love for Crypto, he's the guy with the long hair. I get their names confused, but he's the guy that he's always got his hair in a ponytail, I think. Love for Crypto. One of them's Curtis, and I can't remember the other name. But anyway, Love for Crypto. Go follow him on YouTube. Go subscribe to him on YouTube and follow him on Twitter. The guy is the one that found all this. Okay, but you can see all of it. All the money is going to connect right here. And I don't care if I show you this 1,000 times. This will be the chart that goes in the history books. I am the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe and hit the like button and tell your friends and family that it is all the money. It is XRP. It is XLM. It is Ethereum. And Bitcoin, maybe it'll just sit there, but it'll be there somewhere, you know? Thanks for listening.